All right, sports fans, it's time for another edition of the Sports Couch, a look at area sports through the eyes of a local athlete, coach, or superfan. The Sports Couch is made possible by People's National Bank, a full-service bank with multiple locations throughout Southern Illinois to serve you. People's National Bank, member FDIC, and an equal housing lender. And made possible by Mount Vernon Title Company, your real estate closing professionals. When you need real estate closings, title searches, contract for deed, or any other legal real estate document, depend upon Mount Vernon Title Company. Who will be on the couch this morning? Let's find out. And hello again, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Couch. I'm Randy Olson, your host. Today we're going to talk about girls high school basketball, and we're going to visit with one of the most successful coaches in the state of Illinois, and a guy who has won over 700 games coaching in his basketball career. Can you believe it? Yeah, he's currently the head coach of the Vienna Lady Eagles, and that's Rick Metcalf, who joins us right now. Rick, great to have you on the show. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Randy.
Hey, you are off to a really good start this year with your Vienna Lady Eagles. You're already 4-0 out of the gate, and you just won the championship of the Heron Invite, so congratulations.
Yeah, much appreciated. Yeah, the girls have been working really hard, and didn't expect to be where we're at this juncture.
Well, you know, that's a good question because when you said you didn't expect to be at this point, because last year you were 29-3, you won just about every tournament you were in last year and won another regional. How many girls did you have coming back, or I should say how many starters you have coming back from that team last year that was 29-3?
Well, we had one starter in Gina Waters, and Iris Mount was the only other player that actually got a lot of playing time off that team. That was an exceptional basketball team. And so, you know, we pretty much lost 8 players, our top 8. That's including one girl that we had penciled in to start this year, and she chose not to play. So, you know, we had one starter coming back, and Iris. So we had a lot of voids that we had to fill.
Well, and you ended up putting 3 of your girls on the all-tournament team as well, and having the MVP of the tournament. So that's great. Right.
You know, Jenna, from what I've been told, you know, by the local junior colleges, could probably start at least 2 of them, maybe 3 right now. She's that good. And then Iris is also getting some looks. You know, she's a super strong kid. And then Abby Jones, you know, she's just made herself into a really good basketball player. So those were the 3 that made the all-tournament over there in Heron.
Yeah, you know, and you capped off that championship at Heron with a big win over Benton, and that's huge when you can beat a large school like Benton.
Right. You know, we're a Black Diamond school, and for the last 6 years, outside our conference, I don't think anybody will argue. For a 2A school, you know, we play a 3A or a South 7 schedule. You know, we've always done that. You know, when I was a boys coach, you know, we always play a tougher schedule outside the conference. You know, it's going to do nothing but get you better. You know, so we're constantly, you know, playing bigger and better schools.
Right. Let's talk about what you've got coming up on your schedule for the girls at Vienna.
We got, actually tomorrow we open up our conference against Johnson City. It'll be our first home game against Johnson City, and then Tuesday, back-to-back games, we play Cesar Valera, who's the favorite coming into this year. They're stacked. They got everybody back, you know, except for one starter. You know, they got height, quickness, the whole shebang. And then we got a day off, and then we got to go up to Trico, and they got 3 starters back. They're going to be pretty salty. They're actually picked second in the conference, and we're third.
Yeah, so this is a big week for you then, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a big week. You know, it'll be a good test for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Looking forward to the challenge.
Right. I think this is your 6th year coaching the girls there at Vienna.
Correct.
And all told, you've coached high school basketball, either boys or girls, for a total of 34 years. This will be your 35th season, and we'll get into that career here in a moment. But a question I want to ask you is, since you've coached boys and you've coached girls, I think you coached boys 20 years and girls 14 years, obviously there's a difference from coaching boys and coaching girls. And your philosophy and approach, I'm sure, has to be different, too. Talk about that a little bit, Rick.
Well, you know, I coach the girls hard, you know, and they know it's nothing personal or anything like that, but you know, I get after them just like I do, you know, or like I did the boys, you know, for the most part. The beauty about girls is you got to be careful what you say, because girls will go, if you tell them to go from point A to B, they're going to go A to B. Now, boys, they might go A to C first, then back to B. You know, but you you gotta watch what you say to the girls. When you're describing, your sets and all that kind of stuff. But they definitely keep me honest. That's for sure.
Yeah,
But and the girls want to please you. As far as they don't want to upset you. Where boys, will tend to challenge you a little bit more that way. But it's been a good, the last 15 years have been great for me, going on my 15th, on the girls' side.
Mm-hmm.
It's, people ask me, what would you rather coach? And for this juncture of my career, it's the best place to be as we speak.
I gotcha. Well, I've been broadcasting basketball games long enough to remember you when you were coaching boys at Cesar-Valliere. And I remember you being a pretty fiery coach back in those days, coaching the boys. And I don't know if anybody's told you this or not, but I feel like you've mellowed a little bit with age. Would you say so or not?
Well, yeah. When I was younger, I pretty much coached. I think pretty much everybody that I've ever coached would tell you I'm a player's coach. I always coach the kids the way that I would have liked to have been coached. I'm tough on them, but I'm fair at the same time. And the thing that I do, pretty much like every coach, I guess, is I hold the kids accountable. You got to hold them accountable. I don't tolerate, cutting corners or anything. The screen's got to be correct. Your set's got to be correct. But it's little things like showing up on time. Your work ethic. We teach a lot of that stuff. We teach etiquette. Even off the floor and stuff like that. But I think that all helps out. But I'm still pretty tough on the girls. But at the same time, they know I love them at the same time as well. So
yeah,
that won't change.
Well, that philosophy you just mentioned, Rick, about holding kids accountable, that's obviously been a winning philosophy for you because going into tomorrow's game, you've got 719 career coaching victories at the high school level, which is truly amazing.
Well, I've been fortunate. Every coach that's been successful has had good players, and some great players. There ain't no coach that's going to tell you different. But it takes a lot of hard work. When I was younger, I was an open gym guy. We opened that gym up in Cesar 3-4 days a week, 2-3 hours. And then some coaches, afterwards they got away from that and they started, lifting the weights. Whatever works for you. But I'm a firm believer. You put the ball in the kid's hand and just let them play. And don't, like now with this AAU stuff, it's, like robots and stuff. Where you got refs and things like that where a kid's not allowed to have a lot of freedom, but I still believe in pickup ball, to the max. You don't see that in our area as much as you do up in the city, but, a lot of my philosophy is based on that kind of stuff. We like to, I prefer, to get up and down the floor, and press and get after you, but, every year I didn't have those kind of teams. Sometimes I had tall, slow teams. My first couple of years at Cesar, we couldn't do that. No disrespect, we were just big. We ran a lot of high-low sets. Our lateral quickness, pretty much 1 through 5 was dirt slow. Had one kid that was pretty quick, Joe Huey, but besides that, you just got to go with what you got.
Yeah, I got you. Well, in addition to the 719 wins, you've only got 233 losses, and if somebody wants to do the math, what you'll find out is Rick Metcalf has won a little over 75% of his games that he's coached in. To me, that's probably the most incredible stat, Rick. It's not just that you've won 719 games, but you're winning more than 75% of the games you coach in.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. I've always worked pretty hard, who's next man up. There's not too many, I'm old school. You know that. I think everybody out there knows that. I still go to the games and scout, where probably 95%, if not more, coaches, they sit at home watching on TV. That's fine. And I watch games on TV as well, but it's just a whole different feel when you go watch it in person.
Mm-hmm.
You see the body language, you see different things. It takes time. I don't think it's hard work. It's just putting in the time to do it. But everybody has their own philosophy. It's worked for me forever. I still do the same warm-ups. My first week and a half, 2 weeks of the season hasn't changed since the Murray State days. Everything that we do is Division I stuff. Why change it? It's been working all these years, and after a couple of weeks, you tinker. You change your offenses, your defenses with what you got. And I think that's one reason for the success.
Well, this is your 35th year of coaching a high school hoop, so obviously you enjoy what you're doing or you wouldn't be doing it anymore.
Well, my wife and my junior college coach think one reason why is I didn't start playing organized ball until I was a sophomore in high school.
Wow.
I was pretty much what you call a YMCA guy. I played. I didn't even know what 3 seconds was in the lane when I was a sophomore in high school. Because I played Y ball. I played at the park. I played at Broome and KVC. I played at Pioneer Park. It was 3-4 hours a night. I was a street guy. As far as that goes, and that's the kind of ball I like. And I kind of like to teach way a little bit. I call it organized mayhem. But kids love that style. They love to play it.
Mm-hmm.
I give kids a lot of freedom. To do what they're capable of. But that's the philosophy I believe in.
Yeah. Well, without giving away any secrets, walk us through a typical practice for the Vienna Lady Eagles. Like, for example, maybe what you worked on today. Do you spend so much time on drills and then you work on offensive sets and defensive sets, break and press? Kind of walk us through a typical practice.
Well, every practice is pretty much the same. I fundamental people to death. We keep going until 1 through 14, they all, they do everything absolutely correct. I don't waver on that. We keep going until you do it right, and no slackers, in our practice. If you're on varsity, you're going to do it correct. Now, it might take you a minute or two. And if you don't get it, you'll stand back, get at the end of the line or whatever. We don't have very many lines. I tell the kids, you play until you hear the whistle. Well, guess what? I don't have a whistle. Mm-hmm. So there's no out of bounds. So it gets pretty wild at times. When the ball goes out of bounds, we keep playing. So there's no stoppage. At all. But we do a ton of ball handling drills. Now I've changed with the girls. I do a lot of pivoting, cord, a lot of sit-ups, a lot of push-ups, a lot of flexing of the knees, pivoting off both feet, triple threat. Simple things like that. But a lot of times on the boys' side, you take for granted.
Mm-hmm.
But we do that for about anywhere between 10 and 15 minutes before we do our 5-on-4 drills, and things like that. But that pretty much stays the same. And then depending on what we have to go, work on, we do 11-man fast break drill, or then we'll get into some simple sets or our full court stuff. But usually save that stuff for then to practice.
Yeah.
But I'm big on 5-on-4. We do that 15, 20 minutes a day. I can't understand when I'm talking to some coaches how they don't even do it like once a year. But we work pretty hard on rotation.
Got it. Yeah, I love that philosophy. That's great. Well, that's going to wrap up this portion of the interview, having to talk about this year's team and what you kind of do with the girls at Vienna. Now we're going to get into your background a little bit, and for those of you who want to catch the interview about the background, you can catch that here on a separate link.